ለመማር ወደ ትምህርት ተቋም መሄድ ግድ አይደለም። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
ራሳችሁን ከኮሮና ቫይረስ ወረርሽኝ እየጠበቃችሁ በቤታችሁ ወይም በተመቻችሁ ቦታ በኢንተርኔት አማካኝነት በኦንላይን ትምህርታችሁን መከታተል ትችላላችሁ።
ካናዳ ከሚገኘው ኢንተርናሽናል ኤር ትራንስፖርት አሶሲዬሽን አያታና ከእንግሊዙ ኢንስቲትዩት ኦፍ ኮመርሻል ማኔጅመንት ICM ጋር በመተባበር የሚሰጡ ትምህርቶችን ተከታትላችሁ በ6 ወር ጊዜ በዓለም አቀፍ ደረጃ ተቀባይነት ያለውን የስልጠና ማስረጃ ባለቤት መሆን ይቻላል።
ልምድ ባላቸው መምህራን እየተማራችሁ ጥያቄና መልስ የክፍል ስራዎች ፈተና መፈተን ክፍል ውስጥ እንዳላችሁት አይነት በኦንላይን ባላችሁበት ቦታ ከናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ
የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ
let's see the three processes. The first one is encoding, and the second one storage, then retrieval. These are the process of memory. Encoding is the first step. The first step, it means transforming the information so that it can be stored. It's the process of transforming the data into a meaningful form and associating it with existing memory or image or sound. Encoding. You can take a computer. Like an example, you can take computer. Like an example, you can take computer, and in computer, encoding is the typing process. When you're typing, you are encoding. In computer, when you're typing, that means you are encoding. That's a typical example of encoding. And the second process is storage. Information is held for the future use. When we talk about storage, the information we encoded will be transformed, will be transported to the short-term memory or long-term memory. Then it will be stored. The last process is retrieval. We use the stored information. We take it out and we use it when necessary. So when we go to memory, we can divide. When we go to memory, we can divide memory into two: short-term memory and long-term memory. As the name implies, short-term memory indicates that the word short-term memory indicates that something which stores for a short time, and long-term memory is which stores memory for a long time. Okay, let's see. Okay, stages of memory. The first is sensory memory. Sensory memory is the earliest stage of memory. During this stage, informations are stored for a very short time, very short time. Sometimes it's not even considered as a memory. Sensory memory, our sense organs have the capacity to store something for a very short time. For instance, what we see will be stored. What we see will be stored for up to half a second. When I turn my face around, for example, when I see around this room, I see different things on my way. So those things will be stored in my sensory memory at least for half a second. Visual information for half a second. Then how about sound? Sound will be stored for 3 to 4 seconds. 3 to 4 seconds. That means a car passing by, different sounds around you will be stored for 3 to 4 seconds. So from these memories, only certain aspects of memory will be transferred to the short-term memory. Will be transported to the short-term memory. Okay, what's short-term memory? This short-term memory is active memory. What do we mean by when we say active? When we say active, it means, for instance, now I'm discussing with you and you are listening to me. So both of us are using our short-term memory or our active memory. Information that is currently active. In this case, I can give you an example. There is another psychologist, the founder of psychology, Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud divided our brain into 3 parts. That means it's not that he divided it in the way our brain functions. Not that this is conscious, pre-conscious, or unconscious, but he divided it the way our brain functions. For instance, look at the figure. Look at this figure here. We'll see it in detail at the 6th chapter. Here, look at here. Here, this is an iceberg. Imagine this is a sea. An iceberg is a floating ice. So, very little amount of it is outside the sea. So according to Sigmund Freud, our conscious brain is very small part of it. Look, we can see only this very small part of it, very small amount of it here. However, a large part of the iceberg is under the sea. Large part of the iceberg is under the sea. So our conscious mind, our active memory or short-term memory, conscious mind is very small part, very small portion. However, in case of the unconscious and pre-conscious, this is a very big, like a long-term memory. We'll see it later. So when we pay attention to sensory memories, when we pay attention to what we see, to what we hear, to anything around us, then that information will be transported to the short-term memory. Most of the information stored in short-term memory will last from 20 to 30 seconds. For instance, we are discussing right now. We are using our short-term memory. So most of the things, unless you revise them or you read them again and again, you will forget them. Because those informations are stored in the short-term memory. However, most people, most youngsters, without knowing that informations, for the first time, information is stored in the short-term memory, they assume that they have a problem of memorizing things. Some of them say, I don't understand, I cannot hold things, whatever. The problem is that the information is stored in the short-term memory, in the first hand, which lasts for 20 to 30 seconds. Then, when we rehearse it, when we read it again and again, it will be transported to the long-term memory. It will be memorized in the long-term memory, in here, in the storage. In case of Sigmund Freud, in here, in the storing place, it will be stored. It will be stored. Okay. 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 What will happen when our short-term memory, the capacity of the other character of this short-term memory is that the capacity is very small. It's not as big as long-term memory. Look here. Small part of the iceberg is above the sea. So the capacity is not as big as the unconscious and preconscious or long-term memory. So what will happen? What happens when this short-term memory is full? When this short-term memory is full? Okay, can anyone tell me? Can anyone tell me? Can anyone tell me? For instance, take a flash disk flash. When you, for instance, you have a 2 GB flash and it's full, so that when you try to save some things, what will happen? What will happen? Belay.
It says insufficient. You have insufficient space.
Insufficient space. Very good. Very good. Cool. So what do you think will happen to the short-term memory? To your short-term memory. For instance, if I tell you some 3, 4, 5 pages or 10 pages or 20 pages, what will happen? You are attending me with your short-term memory now, because your active memory is your short-term memory. So what do you think will happen?
Replace ያደርገዋል።
Replace ያደርገዋል. Very good. Very good. Thank you. ምን ያደርጋል? Look here. Look here. ምን ይፈጠራል? The flash disk shortage of memory, short-term memory. However, what will happen is that it will erase the old information. For instance, if I tell you 10 names of students or 10 phone numbers, then what will happen? You start to forget. When I tell you the 10th one, you start to forget the first 2 or 3 phone numbers because your short-term memory capacity is small. So it will erase the first one. For instance, if I tell you 20 names, when you start the 21st name, our short-term memory capacity is very small, so that it will erase the first 2 or 3 parts, 3 names. So this is how our short-term memory functions or activates. However, there is a mechanism which we can increase our short-term memory. Look, in short-term memory, the first one is rehearsal. Rehearsal is repeating over and over again. The first thing, the short-term memory capacity, we will rehearse. That's called rehearsal. The other thing is chunking, grouping similar items. Chunking ማለት similar የሆኑትን ነገሮች አንተን እናደርጋለን ማለት ነው። ለምሳሌ let me give you one example. For instance, someone may give you a phone number. ስልክ ይሰጣችኋል፣ ስልክ ቁጥር ይሰጣችኋል። ለምሳሌ የሰውየው ስልክ 0911 0705 ከዛ በኋላ 01 ይሆናል። 07 05 01 ይሆናል። እነዚህ ነገሮች በቀላሉ ለመያዝ ቼንኪንግ የሚባለው ምን ማድረግ እንችላለን? ለምሳሌ 0911 ኮመን የመጀመሪያ ስልኮች መነሻ ችግር የለውም። ስለዚህ ሌሎቹን ለመያዝ ምን እናደርጋለን? 07 የሚለው በተመሳሳይ ሲሚላር አይተምስ በሰባት ምንድነው? ስላሴ 05 አቦ ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ 01 ልደታ እናደርገውና ስላሴ አቦ ልደታ በሚለው ቁጥሩን እንይዘዋለን ማለት ነው። ስልክ ቁጥሩን እንይዘዋለን። ይሄንን በማድረግ በመናቀው ነገር ጋር በማያያዝ ነገሮችን መያዝ እንችላለን። ለምሳሌ ይሄ ብቻ አይደለም። የሰው ስም ሲነገር when someone tells when we ask somebody his name, when he tells us his name, we don't want to forget it. So what we will do when if his name is Kedus, you say, oh, my cousin's name is Kedus. በቃ ስለዚህ ቅዱስን ስታዩት ጊዜ ካዘናችሁን ታስታውሱበት በስሙ ትጠሩታላችሁ ማለት ነው። that's the name of that's the way we can increase the capacity of the short term memory. እንደዚህ በማድረግ ቸንክ በማድረግ እና ሪሄርሳል በመሸምደድ we can increase the capacity of our short term memory. Then from this we'll go to the long term memory. Long term memory is just like a permanent storage in a computer. CPU እንደምንለው ማለት ነው in a computer. What is going to be stored is relatively permanent and it is unlimited in space, in storage capacity. Unlimited. I mean, our long-term memory can store lots of things. Lots of things. So unlimited in terms of storage capacity. In Freudian psychology, ስዕሉ ላይ እንዳየነው ቅድም እዚህ ጋር ሎንግ ተርም ሜሞሪ ውስጥ የሚካተቱት የቶቹ ናቸው? እነዚህ ሁለቱ ናቸው። ፕሪኮንሽስ ኤንድ አንኮንሽስ ናቸው። እዚህ ጋር ይመዘገባል ማለት ነው። ከሾርት ተርም ሜሞሪ ሎንግ ተርም ሜሞሪ ውስጥ ይገባሉ ማለት ነው። Preconscious and unconscious. Now, this long-term memory is largely outside of our awareness, but can be called. It's not under our awareness. What do we mean by it's not under our awareness? We mean that, for instance, while we are discussing right now, you are only thinking about what we are discussing right now. You don't think about what happened to you during the morning, the afternoon, during the lunch time, the break time, or whatever, the tea time, or whatever. Those things are stored in your long-term memory, but they are not in your awareness. So long-term memory is totally long-term, largely outside of our awareness. It's not under our awareness. It's like a store. ለምሳሌ አንድ ነገር ስቶር ውስጥ እንከታለን. We put something in a store and we lock it. That thing is in the store. We may forget where we put it, but that thing is where we need it, we'll take it out. Just like that, our long-term memory is like a store, a big store. It stores lots of things. However, those things are stored. They are not on our hands. But when we need those things, we can take them out. We can take it out, anything. Okay, so long-term functions like that, largely outside of our awareness, but can be called. Some of the informations, those informations in long-term memory, some of them are easy to recall, while others are difficult. Long-term memory lies there are several subcategories. Long-term memory መከፋፈል እንችላለን. ለምሳሌ declarative memory እናደርጋለን. Declarative memory, the first part, declarative memory እናደርጋለን. Under declarative memory, semantic and episodic memory. Semantic memory means meaning of words, with which the place we store meaning of words, concepts, and our ability to do maths. Semantic memory. Episodic memory about events, situations, etc. እነዚህ ነገሮች episodic memory ነው እዛ ጋር የሚቀመጥ። ሌላኛው ደግሞ non-declarative memory እንላለን. The second one is a non-declarative memory ናቸው. ለምሳሌ when we brush our teeth, write a name, scratch our eyes, these things, I mean, we don't care. We do it unconsciously. Even sometimes we don't consider it like a memory, because due to extensive practice and conditioning or habits, we do it unconsciously. This is the second non-declarative memory. Then our memory organizes things. Is everything clear? Anyone? ግልጽ ነው? እንኳን ላክ ግልጽ ነው? እንኳን ላክ እሺ, is it clear?
Can I ask a question?
Please.
About short-term memory, when it's full, the information sync ነው የሚያደርገው or replace ነው የሚያደርገው?
Replace. ለምሳሌ good question. For instance, you have a cup of tea. አንድ ኩባያ በብርጭቆ ውስጥ ሻይ ቀርተሃል ጠዋት ላይ። እዛ ሻይ ላይ when you add more than the teaspoon with the teacup, more than the capacity of the teacup, what will happen? ይፈሳል. Just like that, short-term memory when we add more information, more than the capacity of the short-term memory, it will erase the former information. የመጀመሪያው ምን እያደረገው ይሄዳል? እየሰረዘው ይሄዳል.
Okay, ወደ long term memory sync አያደርግም? እናራስዋለን ሪኮል ለማድረግ ሊያስቸግር ይችላል፣ ግን ወደ long አንዴ ያየነውን ነገር አንረሳም የሚባል ነገር ስላለ
good ወደ long term memory የሚሄድም አለ ማይሄድም አለ። እናየዋለን። እሱ ተጠብቀኝና ትንሽ ደቂቃዎች ላይ ከዛ በኋላ ሁሉም ነገሮች ወደ ሎንግ ተርም ሜሞሪ አይሄዱ። የተወሰኑ ነገሮች ወደ ሎንግ ተርም ሜሞሪ ይሄዳሉ። ስንደርስበት እናየዋለን።
እሺ
ኦኬ Okay, another question. Do you have another question? Do you have another question? Anyone? Okay, let's proceed. Please. ፊት ለፊት ስለማላያችሁ ፊት ለፊት ብንታይ ኖሮ በጣም እንትን ነበር ክላስ ውስጥ ይሆን። Okay. Okay, the ability to access and retrieve information from long-term memory allows us to actually use these memories to make decisions, interact with others, and solve problems. But how is information organized? Information is organized. How is the information organized in the long-term memory? The first one is clustering. Clustering. Our long-term memory organizes or arranges information in cluster, related information into groups. Related information into groups. This is called semantic network. Semantic network. Look here. Look at this figure. When you see this figure, look. For instance, when someone calls a cow, a goat, or whatever, you'll make cluster animals. When someone talks about farm, under farm there are animals. Those are tame animals or whatever, horse, cow, goats, sheep. Then under crops, corn, wheat, under machines, tractor, like that. Our memory, when organized things, it will put it in cluster. If someone says cow, you'll put it under animals. If someone says truck, you'll put it under machine. If someone says crops, whatever. When we store things in the long-term memory, we put it like this. But we do this unconsciously, not consciously, but unconsciously. Our brain do it unconsciously. The other memory is flashbulb memory. Flashbulb, they are memories of specific or surprising events that are so vivid. Flashbulb memory ደግሞ አዲስ የሆኑ ነገሮችን ስቶር የሚያደርግበት flashbulb memory ይባላል። flashbulb memory እንለዋለን። ለምሳሌ flashbulb memory unexpected የሆኑ ነገሮች ሲከሰቱ ስቶር የምናደርግበት ነው። ለምሳሌ አንድ ኤግዛምፕል ልስጣችሁ። let me give you one example. ዶክተር አብይ አህመድ የመጀመሪያ ጊዜ ሲመረጥ አብዮት አደባባይ ሰልፍ ነበር። ለምሳሌ እዛ ሰልፍ ላይ ምን ተከሰተ? Can anyone tell me?
Yes, bombing.
Fire, bombing. Okay, bombing ተከሰተ። እንደዚህ አይነት ሰርፕራይዚንግ የሆኑ ነገሮች የት ነው የሚቀመጡት? flashbulb memory. Specific or surprising ኢቨንቶችን የሚያስቀምጥበት ቦታ flashbulb memory ይባላል። እዛ ጋር ስቶር እናደርጋቸዋለን ማለት ነው። Okay, like that of short-term memory. Short-term memory ላይ ለምሳሌ አይተናል። When we store things in the short-term memory, the rehearsal and chunking አይተናል። long-term memory ላይ ነገሮች እንዲመዘገቡ ለማድረግ ምን ማድረግ አለብን የሚለውን ነገር እንመልከት እስቲ። Storing information in long-term memory. Integrate new material with information already stored. ነገሮችን በቀላሉ ሎንግ ተርም ሜሞሪያችን ውስጥ ለማስገባት እኛ አሁን ትልቁ ችግራችን ብዙ ጊዜ ስናጠና አንድ ካጎነበስን ደብተሩን ብቻ ነው የምናስበው። በቀላሉ ግን ነገሮችን የራሳችን ለማድረግ to understand new things easily, when we read something we have to analyze it with what we know before. What do I know before about this? What's new about it? Was I correct or do I have a problem? So we have to integrate what we know with the new information. በፊት ያለውን ነገር ከአዲሱ ኢንፎርሜሽን ጋር ኢንተግሬት ካደረግነው በቀላሉ ያንን ነገር የኛ ማድረግ እንችላለን። This is one way of transforming things to the long-term memory. እንዳይጠፋብን ለማድረግ በቀላሉ ኢንተግሬት ማድረግ what we know before and what we know now, what we're reading now, we'll integrate it and so that we will store it in our long-term memory. The second thing is elaborate, organize, and contextualize. When we read something, we have to elaborate it. for instance ይሄ ነገር እንዲህ ነው ሲለን አንድ ነገር ምን እንላለን እንዲህ ባይሆንስ ነው ለራሳችን ማለት ነው this is like this the science says this is like this and you will ask we have to see the thing in from different angles from different perspectives so that we can store it in our long-term memory easily these are techniques of storing things in our long-term memory then ስለ memory ስናወራ there is forgetting ማለት ነው forgetting means loss of information already encoded and stored in long-term memory look long-term memory if the information doesn't reach the long-term memory we cannot say we forgotten it to be forgotten to be said forgotten it has to be stored in the long-term memory then much does not really so usually ብዙ ጊዜ much does not really qualify as forgetting ምክንያቱም ብዙ ነገሮች ረሳን የምንላቸው ነገሮች those things we say we forgot them doesn't qualify to be said so because some of the information never encoded look some of the informations never encoded and stored in the first place that means they lost here they're lost here in the first picture look sensory input they lost here we didn't encode them and send them to the sensory memories we didn't encode them and send them to short-term memory we didn't send them this is the information so we didn't encode them and send them to short-term memory so we cannot say we forget it to be forgotten the thing or the idea must be stored in the long-term memory at the first place then the second thing is due to lack of attention some informations some informations may disappear from short-term memory so short-term memory has a capacity of 20 to 30 seconds so if an information is lost from short-term memory we cannot say it's forgotten because it's not stored in the first place the other thing due to inadequate encoding and rehearsal the information may not be transported from short-term memory to the long-term memory encode አላደረግነው rehearsal ደጋግመን ያን ነገር ከተለያየ አንግል ስላላየነው maybe it may not be transferred to the long-term memory these things if the information is lost due to these reasons we cannot label it as forgetting so let me ask you a question do you think forgetting is good or bad is forgetting really good or bad can anyone tell me
it depends on the information
okay
sometimes we don't want some information to remember some events we don't want to remember
okay so will you give it out of 100 is it good or bad give it a percent in a percentile form put it in a percentile
it's
form
80-20
80 which one is 80 good
for good
forgetting is good 80%
no forgetting is good 20%
okay forgetting is bad 80%
yeah
20 okay 80% okay anyone good Brooke okay anyone
I think
who is this
እንቁ
አቤት
okay good okay ዳግም አንዴ እንቁ ይመልስና ትመልሳለህ እሺ እንቁ
I think it's good
ዳግም ነው የምትነግረው አሁን good ያለው እንቁ go ahead እሺ
እኔ የምለው ያው ጥሩ ነው
ኦኬ
ሪፕሌስ ለማድረግ ነው እንትንለው ቅድም እንዳስረዳ
ኦኬ
እንትኑ እየረሳን ነው ሪፕሌስ እናደርገውና ሞስት ኢምፖርታንት እስከሆነ ድረስ ደግሞ ፎርጌት አናደርገው አስፈላጊ እስከሆነ ድረስ ያ ኢንፎርሜሽኑ ፎርጌት ስለማናደርገው ፎርጌቲንግ ኢዝ ጉድ ብዬ ነው የማስበው።
ፎርጌቲንግ ኢዝ ጉድ
ኢንፎርሜሽኖችን በብዛት
እስቲ ቴክ አንድ ጥያቄ ለምሳሌ ለፈተና ትቀርባለህ በጣም የምትፈልገው ነገር ሁሉ ታስታውሳለህ
እሱን አናስታውስም እርግጥ ነው
ታዲያ ያስኬዳል ካልከው ጋር
ያው የምድረስ አዲስ ነገርም ደግሞ እኮ እንትን የበፊቱን ፎርጌት ስናደርግ ነው ሚሞሪ ቅድም እንዳስረዳን ከሆነ
good ምን አለ መሰለህ አሁን እሱ that comes in case of short term memory when we talk about short term memory the capacity of the short term memory is very small so it holds information from 20 to 30 seconds 30 to 20 to 30 seconds so after that it will replace it the capacity of short term memory is very small however the capacity of long term memory is unknown very big በጣም ትልቅ ነው even now if you take Einstein የዓለማችን ምርጥ ሳይንቲስቶችን እንኳን ብንወስዳቸው ተጠቀሙበት የሚባለው በጣም ትንሽ ፐርሰንት ነው 10% ምናምን ነው ከመቶ ጠቅላላ አምሯቸው ተጠቀሙበት you see you get me ስለዚህ እስቲ ምን ትላለህ እስቲ ከዚህ ተነስተው መልስ ስጠኝ
እኔ አሁንም ስቲል እንትኑ ላይ ነው ያሉት ያው መጥፎ አይደለም
መጥፎ አይደለም
እኔ በስፋ አይደለም ነው ምክንያቱም ያው አይንስታይን ፎርጌቲንግ እኛ እንትን የሚሉት ከሆነ ጠቃሚው ነገር ስቲል አስታውሶት ይዘውት ነው ማለት ነው እኔ ብዙ ነገር እንትን ኔግሌክት ባክ አድርገዋል አይንስታይን አሁን ለምሳሌ ትምህርታቸውና አንተ ተውት ነው እንትን ያሉት አቁመው ለዛ እነሱ ፎርጌት አድርገው ነው ወደዚህ ወደ እንትን ያሉት እዛ ነው ሰው ጥሩ ነው ብዬ ነው የምቀጥለው
ጥሩ ነው ትላለህ ብዙ ዛት ኦኬ እሺ good
ለጨምር ትችር
ማን ነበር እሺ ብሩ
በላይ
go ahead እሺ በላይ
ኢንፋክት ምንም የሚረሳ ነገር አይኖርም ያው the ability to recall የማድረግ ነገር ነው ያን ኢንፎርሜሽን እንጂ ሁሉም ነገር ማይንዳችን ውስጥ ይቀመጣል ባድም ሆነ ጉድ ግን ሁሉም ነገር ስቶሪ ይሆናል ግን ይሄ አሁን ሪሄርሳል ባልነው ምናምን የማስታወስ ችሎታ እንጂ አንድ ነገር አየን ነው ያው
ሲመጣ እናስታውሰዋለን
ሪኮል የማድረግ ጉዳይ ነው ያን ኢንፎርሜሽን እንጂ የሚረሳ ነገር የለም
good just አሁን አንተ ያልከኝ ያለው ምንድነው let's make an example with a store you have a big store in your house so you put things there maybe one day when you look for something you don't know where you put it የት እንዳስቀመጥከው ይጠፋብሃል ግን ያ ነገር አለ
yes
ልክ እንደዛ ስቶር እንትን ይላል ሰፊ ስለሆነ ነው እንጂ አንረሳም ያልከው ያለው good ስለዚህ ግን ያልከው አንተ መርሳት ጥሩ ነው ያልከው አንተ አለመርሳት
20% እዛ ስቶር ውስጥ ያስቀመጥናቸው መጥፎ ነገሮች 20% ብንረሳቸው የተሻለ ነው 80% ባንረሳው ጥሩ ነው
good እሺ ዳግምን እናስገባው ዳግም
አቤት
ዳግም
ለኔ 50%
50 እሺ ቀጥል
መርሳት መጥፎም ነው ጥሩም ነው 50 ነው ለኔ
ኦኬ ስለዚህ 50
መርሳታችን መጥፎም የሚሆነው አንዳንድ ነገሮች ብዙ መረሳት የሌለብን ነገሮች አሉ ስራም ላይ
እሺ
ግን መርሳታችን ጥሩ የሚሆንበት ሰዓት ደግሞ አንዳንድ አሁን ለምሳሌ አሁን እየሆነ ያለው ነገር ሴቶች ላይ ምናምን እንደሱ አይነት ጉዳት ሲደርስባቸው ምናምን መርሳት በጣም ያስፈልጋቸዋል እና እሱ ጋር ነው ጥቅም አለው
good okay good ዳግም ኦማር
ሚስተር ኦማር ጥቅምም ጉዳትም አለው
እሺ ተቀበልና 50 እሺ ኦማር ሚስተር ኦማር
yes
ሚስተር ኦማር do you have something to say ዳግም ስፒከር አዘጋለን ዳግም ስፒከር ዘጋለን okay ዳግም okay Omar sorry Omar say something
I will say probably it's very good when I look at the positive because if we remember everything we will be depressed
okay so what percent will you give for forgetting and remembering
I will give like 80-60
80% what
80 out of 80 60 out of 80
60 out of I mean
80
out of 100 what will you give to forgetting
okay
forgetting is good
70
that means the remaining bad is 30
Yeah, bad is dirty. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Omar. Okay, let's see it then. If you said so like this, let's see it. Forgetting is not all that bad. And it's actually a pretty natural phenomenon. As much as we do remember, we forget even more. Imagine if you remember every detail of every minute. Every minute, every hour, every day during your entire life, no matter how good or bad it is. በጣም አስቸጋሪ ነበር የሚሆነው. It will be so difficult. So ስለዚህ forgetting ጠቃሚ ነው. ነገር ግን forgetting is important. However, we sometimes forget some important things, some relevant things to our life. Why is that? The first one is disappear. The first one is the memory has disappeared. It's no longer available in short-term memory. The second one is still stored, but it cannot be retrieved. We forget important things. We forget, as we said before, forgetting is as important, very important. Forgetting is important. But sometimes we forget some things. Some important things. The first reason is that first it may disappear. The second one is still stored, but it cannot be retrieved. And then the store ተደርጓል ቀደም እንዳልነው ስቶር ውስጥ ግን በምንፈልገው ጊዜ ላናገኝ እንችላለን። አንዳንዴ ምን እንላለን እንደው አፌ ላይ አለ እንላለን። አፌ ላይ ነበር እኮ እንዴት ብዬ ምናምን እንላለን። ይሄ በእነዚህ ምክንያቶች ፎርጌቲንግ ይከሰታል። ስለዚህ there are school of thoughts about forgetting. The first school of thought about forgetting is decay theory. Decay ማለት መበስበስ ማለት ነው። እነዚህ decay, these guys are somewhat like fermentation or something. Decay means fermentation or something. These theorists say that we forget things because they decay or fade away. These theorists are mostly associate forgetting. Theorists associate forgetting with time or duration. After 50 or 30 seconds, unless it is rehearsed, the information decay or fades away. Decay or fade away. For instance, there is one saying. For instance, if you graduate, you're undergraduate. Say you're undergraduate, and some graduate after graduation. For instance, if he graduated in psychology, however, if he works in other fields, for instance, in sales, marketing, or whatever, of course, psychology is important for marketers. Through time, what will happen? He starts to forget some theories, different things, year after year. So these theorists say we forget things because they decay. We don't use them. If you don't use them, if you don't rehearse them, they will decay and they will fade away. This is one reason that we forget. The other one is interference theory. Look here. Look at the picture. The picture is very good. Retroactive interference and proactive interference. When we see retroactive interference, usually say you have a neighbor or a little brother. When he's 3 years old or 4 or 5 years old, he went to America. When he comes back from America, what happens? He totally forgets Amharic. He only speaks English because that is retroactive interference. Retroactive interference means that the English language interfered to the Amharic language, just blurred it, and he only uses English. He forget Amharic at all. So proactive. There is another one. Another one is proactive interference. Proactive interference is usually the old knowledge usually interferes with the new one. This is proactive interference. በእነዚህ ምክንያት due to this reason, due to interference, forgetting will happen. Forgetting, it will be difficult to accept new information or to accept old information. So due to interference, forgetting happens. The other thing is memory dysfunction. Memory dysfunction. Memory dysfunction means there are different problems, diseases that cause forgetting. The first one is Alzheimer's disease. It's a progressive disease that destroys memory and other important mental function. Its cause is not fully understood. However, studies suggest that dysfunction of nerve cells in the brain results in Alzheimer. Look, ምን ይሆናሉ? When people get old, usually ብዙ ጊዜ የሚታየው ምንድነው? አሮጊቶች ላይ ሰዎች ሲያረጁ ምን ይሆናል? ብሬናችን ሁሉም ነገራችን እንደሚደክመው መልካችን፣ ቆዳችን፣ ምናችን እንደሚደክመው ሁሉ those cells that work in our brain starts to die. No one knows the reason. No one knows the reason. No one knows the cause. No one knows the cause. However, our nerves that work to function and process information starts to die. This is called Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease. Usually, this disease is we observe this disease, this problem in old people. In old people. ለዛ ነው በእኛ ካልቸር ብዙ ጊዜ ሰው ሲያረጅ ህፃን ልጅ ይሆናል እንላለን። ሰው ሲያረጅ ህፃን ልጅ ይሆናል የምንለው አንዱ ሪዝን ይሄ ነው። This is the reason why we said when people get old they act like a kid, a little kid, because their brain is dying and dying and dying. The other thing is amnesia, is a deficit of memory caused by brain damage or disease, psychological trauma. Amnesia, what we call amnesia is, for instance, you may face a big problem or a puncture in your head, in your brain. From that day onwards, your brain won't function good. I know an athlete, he used to compete for the national team. One day he had a car accident, and from that day onwards, he got a puncture in his spinal cord and brain. So from that day onwards, he acts like a retarded. You don't remember people, you don't remember what he's doing. Actually, when we see amnesia, we can divide it in different branches. Some people forget things before the accident, others only remember things before the accident. The remaining will remain things only after the accident. For instance, there is a movie called the movie of Jackie Chan, which says, "Who am I?" Jackie Chan had an accident, and after that accident, you don't know what happened to him. You can see that movie. The title is "Who Am I?" So this is called amnesia. Amnesia is caused due to different accidents in the brain. Is a deficit of memory caused by brain damage, disease, or psychological trauma. Sometimes this amnesia can be caused due to illness. For instance, small kids, very small kids, if they get malaria while they're very little, it may damage their brain and they will turn out to be retarded. I've seen somebody, after that problem, he turned out to be mentally retarded. Amnesia. So amnesia and Alzheimer are dysfunctions of memory. Okay, how can we, to conclude this chapter, how can we improve our memory? How can we improve our memory? The first one is some strategies to improve our memory. The first one is funnel approach. Learn general concepts or general framework before moving to specific. For instance, let's take ourselves like an example. when we start to study the handout or whatever, the very first day we open that handout, we'll go with our red pen and we start to jot down points. However, if it's our first time, that means everything is necessary, everything is new. So what we have to do is we have to use funnel approach. We have to have general idea. If you have a handout, if you're going to read chapter 1, read it all. Don't start to take notes. First, read all. Read the general, understand the general concept, the general points. Then, after that, when you read it again, you can take a point or you can make whatever, different, you can use a marker and a highlighter and whatever. However, use funnel approach. Funnel approach is important. Read it all in all. Then after that, you can take points, important points. This is called funnel approach. The other thing is, the second one is organize through meaning and association. When we read something, we have to associate what we know before. We have to associate it with what we know before. When we read book, when we read theory, when we read concepts, especially psychology, if you take psychology, everything is not new. It's our life. We can see our little brothers, sisters, or we can remember our life, or we can compare it with our own lives. So that when we read something new, let's not act like tabula rasa or white sheet, like a white sheet, like a white paper. When we read something new, we have to reorganize it with what we know before. We have to see it from our cultural point of view so that we can store it in our long-term memory. The other thing is active learning. What do we mean by active learning? When we say active learning, for instance, some of us are visual. We don't forget things we saw. Some of us, we don't forget things we talk. So when we read something, first, when I tell you something, for instance, if it's not clear, you can go to the YouTube and you can see it. You can visualize it. Take it out, talk it out. The other thing is, when you understand something, to be more clear, go to your friend and elaborate the issue or discuss about the issue so that you will understand the issue very clear. I mean, the issue will be very clear to you. So the fourth one is, the last one is, don't claim about drugs that improve memory. Please. To improve our memory, the only way is to use these techniques. And of course, there will be other techniques too. But don't claim drugs. People try to take different things to be intelligent. However, that's not advisable. Just know about short-term memory, long-term memory, and finally, use these techniques to improve your memory. Good enough? Is it clear? Then today we'll come up with the end of this chapter. So do you have any question, please? Do you have any question? Do you have any question, please? Is there any point? Yes, sir. Who is this? Omar?
Yeah,
Brooke.
yeah, can you explain again Alzheimer's disease again, please?
Okay, okay, Alzheimer's disease. You know what Alzheimer's disease is? Usually we see this problem in old people. For instance, when we get old, our skin won't be as smooth as that, like it is right now. It will shrink. Our moving capacity will decrease. Everything will decrease. Our hearing capacity decreases. Our visual capacity decreases. Like that, just like that, the capacity of our brain also decreases. This is due to Alzheimer's disease, especially not in all people, but in case of Alzheimer's disease, our brain that functions everything, memorizes, whatever, everything, the cells start to die. When the cells start to die, those cells that function our memory starts to die, then the brain won't have the capacity to analyze things, to investigate things, to do things smoothly. So when this thing is severe, when it's severe, sometimes people start to forget their kids, their names, their house, and everything. This is called Alzheimer's disease. And if you need further explanation about Alzheimer's disease, you can you can go to YouTube, or you can go to different materials, and you can see, you can read further, deep. I mean, you can get deep information about it. Is that clear, Omar?
Yeah, very clear. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other question? Brooke, ግልጽ ነው? ግልጽ ነው አልከን ብሩክ ወይስ ይሰማል? ኦኬ ኔትወርክ ጥሩ አይደለም። ንጹህ ምንድነው አርፈደሽ የገባሽው?
አይ ነበርኩ እንጂ ባስከረኝ ነው
ወይስ የመዝጊያ ንግግር ልታደርግልኝ ነው?
አይ ነበርኩ መጀመሪያ
ነበርሽ? ኦኬ ወተሽ ነው እንትን
ነበር። አይ በማል ተቋርጦ ነበር።
እሺ ኤኒዌይ የዛሬውን ክላስ እዚህ ጋር ጨርሰናል። የዛሬው ኦኬ yes who is this?
ስለ ድራግ አንድ ተነግረናል ድጋሚ
which one? የመጨረሻው the last one?
መጨረሻ ላይ
ብዙ ጊዜ ኦኬ ሜሞሪያችንን ለማስተካከል እነዚህ ሶስት ነገሮች አይተናል። ሶ አንዳንድ ጊዜ ገለኛ ጋር እናስባለን እንደው አንዳንድ ድራጎች ይኖሩ እንደ ብለን እንሞክራለን። የተለያዩ ድራጎችን ሰዎች ይሞክራሉና እነዛ ድራጎች መጠቀም ግን it's not advisable to use drugs. People try different drugs to increase their memory capacity. However, it's not advisable. Just know about short-term memory, long-term memory, and follow these steps. And also there will be another steps to improve your memory, so that try to improve your capacity. እሺ ምን አለ እንትን ነገር አለ? ግልጽ ነው?
አይ ገባኛው አሁን ገባ።
good. Anyone? እሺ thank you. የዛሬ ክላስ ጨርሰናል። ኦኬ እሺ ማን ነው? በላይ
አይ ኤክስፒሪየንስ ሼር ማድረግ ይቻላል?
ፕሊዝ
ሎንግ ተርም ሜሞሪን ኢምፕሩቭ ስለማድረግ እኔ የሆነ ላይክ አሁን በፊት ሳጠና
እሺ
ላይክ ሜጋዚን ምናምን ላይ ሂስትሪ ሳነብና ቴክስት ቡክ ላይ ሂስትሪ ሳነብ እኩል አይደለም የማስታወስ ችሎታዬ ማለት ነው። ሜጋዚኑን ሳነብ ነው በደንብ አስተውሼ ለፍሬንድም ሼር ማድረገው።
ኦኬ
ሜጋዚን ላይ ያነበብኩትን ወዲያው አሳስታውሳለሁ፣ ግን ቴክስት ቡክ ላይ ሳጠና ያነበብኩትን ፈተና ክላስ ብዙም አላስታውሰውም ነበርና ላይክ እስቲ እንደ ሜጋዚን ባነበው ብዬ አሰብኩና ቴክስት ቡኩን ከዛ በጣም ሪላክስ አድርጌ እንደ ቴክስት ቡክ አንብቤ እንደ ሜጋዚን አንብቤ ከፍሬንድ ጋር ሼር ሳደርገው ምንም የማይረሳ ነገር ሆነ ማለት ነው። ሂስትሪ ይገርማል ምናምን እያልኩኝ ሼር ሳደርገው ለማስታወስ እንደዚህ ቅድም ሎንግ ተርም ሜሞሪ ላይ ስለተነሳ ነው።
ቶኪታውስ ሪላክስ አድርገስ
ከሌላ ነገር ጋር አታች አድርገ ነው ላይክ ወርልድ ሂስትሪ ላይክ ኤክሳይትድ እየሆነን ምናምን ብናነበው ላይክ ሜጋዚን እንደምናነበው አይነት ቢሆን ሞር እናስታውሰዋለን ብዬ ነው። አመሰግናለሁ።
very good በላይ very good. Okay, anyone else? Okay, let's close up our today's class. Thank you. See you next time.
በትምህርት ከፍ ብሎ መብረር ይቻላል። ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ከከፍተኛ ትምህርት አግባብነትና ጥራት ኤጀንሲ ሙሉ ዕውቅናን ባገኘንባቸው በማስተርስ ዲግሪ MBA በስትራቴጂክ ማኔጅመንት፣ MBA በባንኪንግ እና ፋይናንስ፣ MBA በቢዝነስ ሊደርሺፕ፣ MBA በሪስክና ኢንሹራንስ፣ MSc በኢንተርናሽናል ትሬድ እና ኢኮኖሚክስ ዘርፎች በእውቀት ለመቅረጽ የበቁ ፕሮፌሰሮቻችን አረንጓዴ መብራታቸውን አብርተዋል። በነገራችን ላይ በኬንያ ሀገር ከሚገኙ ስመጥር ዩኒቨርሲቲዎች በሚመጡ ፕሮፌሰሮች የትኩረት መስክ ትምህርቶቹ መሰጠታቸው ልዩ ያደርገናል። በምርጥ የትምህርት ስርዓት የተገነባው ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ በመጀመሪያ ዲግሪ በአቪዬሽን ማኔጅመንት፣ በሆቴል ማኔጅመንት፣ በአካውንቲንግ እና ፋይናንስ፣ በማርኬቲንግ ማኔጅመንት አስተማማኝ ትምህርት ይገቢውና ራስዎንና ሀገሮን ይለውጡ። አድራሻ 22 አደባባይ ወደ ሾላ በሚወስደው መንገድ ላይ ናሽናል አቪዬሽን ኮሌጅ የናሽናል ኤርዌይስ እህት ኩባንያ ህልሞን እውን ያደርጋል።